Hey, Grand Rising family, what's up? This is Chief Kalanago with another video. Hey, man, listen, I got some powerful information for y'all today. I got some great information, and I'm gonna in this video, I'm gonna debunk a lot of this misconception that our people are being taught. Now, once again, family, when I do videos, a lot of times, if it's my own perception, meaning that the way I perceive it, I let you know. But if it's coming strictly from a standpoint of facts, then I state the facts and I let you know where it came from, the source. All right. However, some of the videos that I do an interpretation of what I got from the information because not everything is as forthcoming. Not everything is literal. You know what I'm saying? So I have to, apart from the research, I have to do some in search so that I could get a better understanding of it. And when I do that, I let you know it's my opinion. It's the way my own analysis of it, and what you see, because a lot of times people give information on YouTube and they say it like, it's a fact for sure, but you can't say that. You see, when I would rather you say, for me, I would rather you say that's just my opinion or the way I perceive it, so people would know that's just your opinion and not a fact. So I'm gonna debunk some of some of the statements or concepts or ideas that people are being taught or told in this video. But family, before I proceed, I'm gonna ask you again, do me a favor, man. Even before you continue, hit the GoFundMe link below because this is what I do. This is my livelihood. Look what time it is. I was up since 7 o'clock, meditating and putting this presentation together because I'm truly about freeing the minds of our people. And this is what I do for my livelihood. The lights are on. Even what you looking at me right now on the internet, it has to be paid. Okay. I print stuff. Print. All right. All this is printed work. All right. I'm just showing you again. Print over 50 pages. More prints. All right. Almost 100 pages so that I could research things and bring it to you. All those things cost. You know what I mean? And I do these things because, for one, it's a genuine love that I have for my people. And two, I want to free my people. And three, I know that you don't have the time because a lot of you have 9 to 5s. You have children. Some of you are distracted, and another reason is a lot of people, don't have, the gist of just trying to do all this research. Trust me, it gets frustrating sometimes, but I do it and I bring the information to you. And the least you could do is support the GoFundMe because, again, this is my job. This is my livelihood. That's what I do. I do it every day, all day, so that I could bring it to you. You feel what I'm saying? And yes, I get a lot of emails. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate what you're doing. And people still ask me information and I give it to them. You know what I mean? But even if you appreciate it, that's one thing. It's nice to hear it, but it's also nice to, so that I could see it, show it to me. Because like I said, this is my livelihood. This is my job. That's what I do. And I don't bring information where that's going to make you feel good. No, I'm bringing the truth to you, letting you see things from a whole different perspective so that you could free yourself and free the generations to come. And that's why I do what I do. So once again, put the video on pause. Go hit the GoFundMe link and just support, family. That's all I'm just asking. I'm not in trouble. Okay. I'm not trying to buy land right now. I would love to buy some land so, we could, come together and build on. I would love to do that eventually. I would, honestly. But I have to bring the information so that people could see where they have been. How did we come into this situation? Because a lot of people don't see the need to get out of her. A lot of people don't see the need to get out of the beast. So first, I would have to show you that you are still enslaved, that you are still in a perpetual cycle of slavery. Then once I have accomplished that, then I could go into, well, you know what? Let's come together and get land. I mean, we could do that now, but I have to bring the information first. Okay? Because a lot of people may not see the need to free themselves because they don't know they are slaves. So I have to make sure that this is understood, that these points get to you, that information, you really get it. So once again, this is my livelihood. This is what I do because I care about you. So I'm asking you to pause the video and go support the GoFundMe link. I appreciate that. All right. Now, the information I'm going to bring to you today is really, really important. So if you have to get a pen, get some notes, and most of the research here, it came from it came from Google. All right, and you could go check it out yourself. I would suggest that you do, and please, and certain parts of the information, especially I did get from www.ministersbestfriend.com. Colonization, Doctrine of Discovery, HTML. So you could check that out. But family, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. And so first, we're going to talk about, again, we have, for you to know where to go or what solution to find, you have to know what the problem is. That's just the bottom line. You have to know what the problem is. So I'm going to show you how we ended up in the position that we're in today. And once you get an understanding of that, then you would know what to do. To fix something, you have to know the problem. All right. So we're going to talk about the Dum Diversas, which is the PaPAL bull. So we're going to talk about that. All right. Now, in 1452, Nicholas V issued the PaPAL bull Dum Diversas, granting the King of Portugal the right to reduce any Saracens, pagans, and any other unbelievers to hereditary slavery. Hereditary, another word for that is perpetual. What that means is ongoing until you die, and then your children pick it up until they die, until their children pick it up. In other words, for eternity. Okay, perpetual slavery. That is the cycle that you are in right now. Dum Diversas legitimized the colonial slave trade that began around this time with the expeditions by Henry the Navigator to find a sea route to India, which were financed with African slaves. This approval of slavery was reaffirmed and extended to his Romanos Pontifex of 1455. Now, let me dissect that first paragraph. Now that you know that you are still in a perpetual cycle of slavery, hear what it says. Okay? Dum Diversas legitimized the colonial slave trade that began around this time with the expedition by Henry the Navigator to find a sea route to India, which were financed with African slaves. African slaves, meaning that slaves from the African continent. And even at some point, Africa was just, in fact, Tunisia in Africa was that section, and certain surroundings alone was just called Africa, even before the entire continent was called Africa, Tunisia. Do your research on that as well. So that region in the African continent, that's where they already had slavery. Okay? That form of slavery hadn't come into the New World or the Indies, or what you now call the American continent. So again, I'm showing you that Africa was a separate continent. Okay? Now, let's proceed. He was compelled, however, to add that the lustre of pontificate would be forever dulled by the fall of Constantinople, which the Turks took in 1453. The Pope bitterly felt the catastrophe as a double blow to Christendom and to the Greek letters. Pope Nicholas V and slavery. Nicholas issued the bull Dum Diversas June 18, 1452. Pay attention to those dates. The PaPAL bull Dum Diversas was issued June 18, 1452, in response to a request from the Portuguese monarchy. King Alfonso V was conferred the right to attack, conquer, and subjugate Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ whenever they may be found. It gave title over all lands and possessions seized, and permitted the Portuguese to take the inhabitants and consign them to perpetual slavery. In other words, slavery until the end of time, never ending. Okay, so in other words, there's no end of time because it's never going to end. All right. Now, what we have to pay attention here is this. What you need to know is that it is clearly showing you that the world wasn't Christianized. So Christianity was forced on people. Okay? Children were raped. It tells you that in their Bible, but it told you that it was a man-made God, or of something in the sky, which was a man they call God, was the one who was killing babies and raping women. No, it was the colonizers that was doing that. And they put it in their Bible. That's why you call them God. You're still worshiping them, but you don't know. Christendom. When you call yourself a Christian, you are celebrating the death of your ancestors, the raping of children, the murdering of babies, the raping of young boys. That's what you are celebrating. But I want to take a look at who they were trying to convert and subjugate. Okay? They were trying to conquer, subjugate, and attack the Saracens. Now, a brother did a video trying to explain Dum Diversas, and he's trying to let people believe that the Saracens are us, we here on the American continent. And my brother, again, if you guys are doing lectures and doing videos, putting information out, I appreciate that. But stop telling people that what you're saying is true. If you are going to let people know that it's your opinion or the way you analyze it or perceive it, it's different. But stop telling people it's a fact, because Saracens are not the people of the Americas. They are not the people of the Americas, because at that time, they hadn't even come into the Americas yet. And I'm going to prove that to you. Let us go look at the etymology of Saracen. Saracens, Saracens. All right. Now, Saracens, when you go look at Saracens, what comes up? Barbary. Okay, Barbary, which is Barbary. Now, let's look at the etymology of that. 13th century. Foreign lands, especially non-Christian lands. So in other words, it was just anything that was non-Christian lands was called Saracens or Barbary. Okay, non-Christian lands. So in other words, the entire world wasn't Christianized. Again, your parents was raped to become Christians, and you should be ashamed to call yourself a Christian today, because it's a disrespect to your ancestors. From Latin, Barbaria, see Barbarian. We'll take a look at Barbarian later. Meaning Saracens living in coastal North Africa. It is attested from 1590s via Old French, Barbary, from Arabic, Berber. So those were some of the Moors. Okay? Again, North Africa is not America. It is not the American continent. So therefore, stop telling our people that everybody over here, okay, are Moors. No. Moors came and mixed with our people. That's how I end up having Berber blood in me, more blood in me, and my DNA shows it. Not everybody has more blood in them. Okay, I am showing you the clear distinction that it was just dealing with North Africa. They hadn't gotten to what's called the Indies or the New World or the Americas. So Saracens have nothing to do with America. That is not us. And the pagans they were talking about and non-believers were still in Africa. Now later they may have called us pagans because they called us savages. Now let's look at what we call barbarian. Barbarian, mid-14th century, from medieval Latin, barbarianos. Source of Old English, barbarian, Berber, pagan, Saracen, barbarian, from Latin barbaria, foreign country of Greece, barbaros, foreign, strange, ignorant, unintelligent, those type of things. So basically what I'm saying is this. That had nothing to do with the American continent. It wasn't us. They were calling Saracens. Okay? I just want to point that out. So again, my brother, stop trying to tell people that we are Saracens just because the word Saracen has a root or affiliation with Sarah in the Bible that was married to Abraham, thinking that our people on the American continent are children of Abraham. Stop telling people lies, man, or confusing people to make them think that they are Israelites in the Americas. If you have adapted that, through people who came and mixed with our people, that's fine. I am not saying that you may not be an Israelite. Don't get me wrong, because what I'm saying is I don't want it to be misconstrued. Okay? But stop telling our people that everybody that was on the American continent was Saracens, or Sarah, who was married to Abraham, therefore we are the children of Abraham. No, we are not. Okay? Those people came and mixed with our people. And yes, you may be an Israelite. I don't know what that is. I'm being honest. You may be that, because I don't want to disrespect anybody's religion or their culture. However, it is not originated in the American continent. Those are people that came here from North Africa and came here. So maybe Sarah and Abraham may have been in North Africa, Abraham. All right. And their peoples came and mixed with our peoples. All right. Maybe that's a possibility. But don't say that we here were Saracens. We are not. Okay. Let us continue here. All right. The geographical area of concession given in the bull is not explicit, but Richard Raswell argues that the use of the terms pagan and other enemies of Christ indicates the scope of the bull was applicable to the newly discovered lands among the west coast of Africa, and that the ambiguity of the text was such that it encouraged the Portuguese to extend their explorations further. Now, you hear what they say, all right? The pagans, so you see now, they took out Saracens because the Saracens were only in North Africa. But here now they are saying that the geographical area of concession given in the bull is not explicit to Richard Raswell argues that the use of the terms pagans and other enemies of Christ. You see now they were coming towards what they call the west of Africa. The west of Africa doesn't necessarily mean in Africa. Now they could be talking about the newfound land, which they solidified by saying to extend to their explorations of further afield, newly discovered lands. Now they are talking about the land that they didn't know what they call the new land. Any other land outside of that, they're saying that it extends to the pagans and none and all enemies of Christ. You see, so in other words, they are literally telling you that the Saracens were just synonymous or were just in North Africa. I'm just trying to make my point very clear. He further argues that the use of crusaded language in the bull served to make the Christian-Muslim relationship the model for Africa. They are still dealing with Africa. So their goal was to Christianize Africa and turn it into a Muslim state. So as you could see, both those religions came from the same root. They came from the same people. Again, it's divide and conquer. Okay, if I give you something and somebody else got a problem with it, all I have to do is give you something else, a choice, but it's the same people. It's always the same thing. It's like election day. They give you two presidents, one Democrat, one Republic, but you don't even know that they work for the same people. They have the same boss. The left wing, the right wing, the same bird. It's the same thing here. Christian and Muslim, the left wing, the right wing, but the same bird. Family, there is nothing new under the sun. All right? The bull issued by Nicholas Romanus Pontifex, January 8th, 1455, reaffirmed Dum Diversas and also sanctioned the purchase of black slaves from the infidel. According to Raswell, open parenthesis, 1997, close brackets, he expressed enthusiasm when recalling number of slaves that had been captured, brought back to Portugal, baptized, and expressed his hope that the entire population of these newfound lands would be converted. Okay, at that time they were taking slaves out of those regions and bringing them into Portugal, okay, so that they could be converted. In other words, what you guys call yourself today, converts. How did you become a convert? It's because they raped your grandmother, they raped and pillaged and murdered. They told you what they did in the Bible, but you think it's the God up there. No, it is them. They are the ones you're serving. They are your gods. When you call yourself a Christian and Muslim and all this thing, and no disrespect to your religion, I'm just letting you know the facts. They telling you what they did. So don't blame me. Okay? Go blame the people who converted your ancestors and you adapted the barbaric way that our people became Christians and Muslims. All right? Military force and rather than peaceful evangelization. Stogre 1992 notes that this bull, perhaps in part due to misleading information provided, the Portuguese introduced the concept of military force rather than peaceful evangelization for missionary purposes, and that it applied to lands that had never previously been subject to Christians' ownership, subsequently leading to the brutal disposition and enslavement of the indigenous population. In other words, like I told y'all before, the indigenous people were not Christians. They were not Muslims. Okay? Through military force. Okay? They saying that instead of doing it through evangelization, in other words, going to preach the gospel in peace, they didn't do that. They did it by force. Okay? And they killed again and raped and brutalized, brutal disposition of all the indigenous peoples of the lands and turned them into Christians. So when you're calling yourself a Christian and a Muslim in this part of the world, you are literally spitting in your ancestors' faces. And these pastors know that, but they have sold out. I get it though. It's about the money. I get it. Same thing this conscious lecturers on Facebook, on YouTube are doing. It's about the money. So they're also selling you out. Now, the bull also conferred exclusive trading rights to the Portuguese between Morocco and the Indies, with the rights to conquer and convert the inhabitants. A significant concession given by Nicholas in brief issued to King Alfonso in 1454 extended the rights and granted to existing territories to all those that might be taken in the future. Now, I'm going to repeat that because you see, like I see, I always like to point out these things to show that where all the BS is coming from. And I'm going to prove to you that the American continent was never Morocco. It will never be Morocco. And therefore, I'm going to prove to you again that Moors are not original to the American continent. I do have more blood in me, but it's because of the mix. Okay? Because of the mix. And I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to read that again. The bull also conferred exclusive trading rights to Portuguese. In other words, the PaPAL bull gave Portuguese the exclusive rights between Morocco and the Indies. What is the Indies? The Indies is what's called the Americas. Even before it was called the Americas, it was called the Indies, west of. That's why today parts of the Caribbean is still called the West Indies. Okay, it is telling you that the Portuguese between Morocco, which is in North Africa, okay, and the Indies, separate locations. The Indies, which is and was the Americas, was never Morocco. It will never be Morocco. It is showing you a clear distinction in their own notes. They are telling you what they did, but people want to take it and perceive it the way that they want to so that they could tell you what they want you to know. Again, they're trying to indoctrinate you. Not everybody's a Moor. Okay? And a lot of you that are going around proclaiming Moors, calling yourself Moorish, you are not a Moor. You have just been converted into a movement. I do have more blood in me. And it wasn't my fault, okay? They came and mixed with my people. So again, I'm showing you that Morocco is not the Americas or the Indies. All right? It is argued that collectively, the two bulls issued by Nicholas gave the Portuguese the rights to acquire slaves along the African coast by force or trade. The concessions given in them were confirmed by the bulls issued by Pope Calixtus III inter Catera que 1456, Sextus IV Attorney Regis 1481, and Leo X, which is 1514, and they became the models of subsequent bulls issued by the Pope Alexander VI. Exame Devotionis, Latin. That's what I'm reading, Latin. So, pardon me for that. May 3rd, 1493. Okay, so once again, family, I am showing you that the distinction between Morocco, which is North Africa, and the Indies, which is the Americas, is two complete different land masses. All right, they are not the same. America was never Morocco. All right, all right. Dodum Sequedem, September 23rd, 1493, when he conferred similar rights to Spain in relation to the new found lands in the Americas. In the Americas. Again, distinguishing the Americas from all the other land. They spoke about where the Saracens. Now, you see, once they started coming into the newfound land, they stopped using the word Saracens, because Saracens is not synonymous, okay, or they were not the people of the Americas. They were the Berbers and the people in North America. So stop telling our people on the American continent that they are the Saracens and that they are children of Sarah. No, they are not. Okay? They are not. If Abraham was real and Sarah was real, which I doubt, but if they were, then because of the mix that may be, we may have relation to them. But they were not indigenous to the Americans, to the Americas. Okay? And it's in their own documents. You people are perceiving it the way that you want to and telling people it's a fact. I would rather you say it's your opinion like I normally do when it's my opinion. All right? I am reading the facts right now. Okay? Now, some historians view these bulls together as extending the theological legacy of Pope Urban II crusades to justify European colonization and expansionism, accommodating both the marketplace and the yearnings of the Christian soul. In other words, they were looking in the marketplace. It was a marketplace yearning for of the Christian souls. They wanted your soul. They wanted to turn your soul into Christians. That's how y'all became Christians, through rape and murder of your ancestors. But you proud to be Christians, though. You will never get it. Dum Diversas was essentially geographically unlimited in the application, perhaps the most important papal act relating to Portuguese colonization. In other words, they made it unlimited to all the lands. Okay? They went around to Christianize, the entire world where indigenous people were. Again, indigenous people were not Christians. They were not Christians. So stop telling our people they came here and they got their Bible, but King James came and did a remix. No, we didn't have that kind of Bible here. We didn't have that. Stop telling the lies. Dum Diversas provided. We grant you, King of Spain and Portugal, by these present documents with our apostolic authority, full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Saracens and pagans and any other unbelievers and enemies of Christ, wherever they may be, as well as their kingdom, duchies, countries, principalities, and other property, and to reduce their persons into perpetual slavery. Here you go again. The King of Spain and Portugal, okay, they had the apostolic authority coming from your churches to go around the world where indigenous peoples were, all right, to capture them. Everybody who didn't believe in Christ. So in other words, we didn't know of any Christ. Again, we didn't know of no Jesus that was beaten into your people. It is telling you that in their own documents. Get your head outside of the Bible for 1 second and do some real research, because they gave you the Bible. All right? So that you could, of course, reduce their persons to perpetual slavery. That's why in your Bible it tells you that your God said it's okay to be a slave. Of course. Which God do you think they're talking about? Which Lord do you think they're talking about? They're talking about the lords of England and Portuguese and Rome. Yes, they told you it's okay, but you think it's an imaginary man in the sky who tell you it's okay to be a slave. In 1537, Pope Paul III explicitly condemned enslaving non-Christians in Subliminus Die. In 1686, the Holy Office limited the bull by decreeing that Africans enslaved by unjust wars should be freed. The Holy Office. Where do you think the Holy Bible came from? It came from the Holy Office. And go look at the real meaning of holy. It is not. It means sacred, sacred, sacred. It's a curse word. Dum Diversas, along with other bulls such as Ramanos, Pontifex, 1454, Nafabeles et Sumi, 1497, Dodum Pro Pate, 1516, and Aquam Reputamos, 1534, document the Portuguese Eos Patronatos. Pope Alexander VI, a native of Valencia, issued a series of bulls limiting Portuguese power in favor of that of Spain, most notably Dodem Sequendem 1493. All right, so let's proceed. Okay, do me a favor, put the video on pause and go hit the GoFundMe link, family. Support the GoFundMe, all right? I appreciate that. All right, so now we're going to talk about the colonial history, theory of Christian expansion, U.S. Constitution, and the discovery doctrine, or the doctrine of discovery. All right, and once again, that information you could go to ministers /best/friend.com, colonization /doctrine of discovery HTML. All right, now, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This idea, which is a bedrock of the American democracy, is from the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which was completed in 1787. That same year, the U.S. government enacted the Northwest Ordinance, which created the first organization territory of the region that is today Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Among other regulations, the ordinance set forth a guiding principle for the treatment of Native Americans and their lands. The utmost good faith shall always be observed towards the Indians. Their land and property shall never be taken without their consent, and in their property rights and liberty they shall never be invaded or disturbed. Just 7 years later, in 1794, the U.S. government sent a regiment led by General Mad Anthony Wayne to conquer a confederation of American Indian tribes attempting to keep hold of their lands. At the Battle of Fallen Timbers, a band of 800 Native Americans was slaughtered and 500 acres of crops were destroyed. The tribes of the region were forced into a treaty that limited them to the northern region of what is today Ohio, and it took them 20 years to recover from the loss of lives and property. In 1802, President Jefferson signed the Georgia Compact, which stated that in exchange for the land, what is today Alabama and Mississippi, the federal government would remove all American Indians within the territory of Georgia as soon as it could be done reasonably and peacefully. By 1830, the U.S. government had passed the Indian Removal Act, which authorized the president to remove the remaining Eastern Indian lands to west of the Mississippi between 1938 and 1939. Under President Andrew Jackson, 15,000 Cherokee Indians were forcibly taken from their land, herded into the makeshift forts, and made to march, some in chains, 1,000 miles to present-day Oklahoma. Over 4,000 Cherokee died from hunger, disease, and exhaustion on what they call Nana, Dua, Sunni, or the Trail of Tears. By the late 1840s, almost all Native Americans had been moved to the lands west of the Mississippi. It seems astonishing that a country founded upon the ideal of life, liberty, and property, would move from a policy of good faith towards the Native Americans to one of complete denomination in the space of one generation. In order to understand how such contradiction could occur, it is necessary to go back in time almost 7 centuries before the American Revolution. 1095. In 1095, at the beginning of the Crusades, Pope Urban II issued an edict, the papal bull Terra Nullius, meaning empty land. It gave the kings and princes of Europe the right to discover or claim land in non-Christian areas. Now, when they say empty land, it doesn't mean that they didn't have inhabitants. The people were there. They call it empty land because they were not Christians. Again, our ancestors were not Christians. They were not Christians, so they call them empty. That's why they tell you if you don't have their Christ or their Jesus, you are empty and you need to be filled with the Spirit or the Holy Ghost. Family, I am giving you the drop, man. All right. 1452. This policy was extended in 1452 when Pope Nicholas V issued the bull Romanos Pontifex, declaring war against all non-Christians throughout the world and authorizing the conquest of their nations and territories. All non-Christians. In other words, the world wasn't Christianized. The indigenous people were not Christianized. They had never heard of Christians. That was forced upon them. These edicts treated non-Christians as uncivilized and subhuman, basically 3/5 of a human, and therefore without rights to any land or nation. Christian leaders claimed a God-given right to take control of all lands, used this idea to justify war, colonization, and even slavery. Family, is the same thing in this document they have in their Bible. They told you that their God said it's okay to have slaves. Okay, if you were not a Christian, they wanted to turn you into a Christian. They called you a subhuman, 3/5 of a human, which is what they call you today. People, therefore, without rights to any land or nation. Black people, African American, Negroes, colored, minorities, they have no rights to any land. They are not a nation. Therefore, they are a nationless people. Therefore, they are subhuman, 3/5 of a human. Family, there is nothing new under the sun, family. History always repeats itself. It's a continuous, perpetual cycle. You are still living in or under Dum Diversas. You Christians as well. A perpetual cycle of slavery. You are literally slapping your ancestors in their face. 1492. By the time Christopher Columbus set sail in 1492, this doctrine of discovery was a well-established idea in the Christian world. In other words, we come to your land, you're not a Christian, we will kill you, we will rape your children, rape your women. In fact, they got it in their Bible when God's destroying and killing babies. Yeah, that's not an imaginary God in the sky. No, that's them doing that. The lords of England and Rome and Portugal. That is them doing that. Spain. That's what you are serving. They are your God. Rome is your God. The same Catholic that is responsible for Christians and Muslims. Yes, they are the same ones. 1493 again. Upon his return to Europe in 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued the bull Enter Caterra, granting Spain the right to conquer the lands that Columbus had already discovered and all lands that might come upon in the future. The decree also expressed the Pope's wish to convert the natives these lands to Catholicism in order to strengthen the Christian empire. You see that again? So the Catholics and the Christians are the same people. Okay, so you Christians going around talking, oh, I'm not a Catholic. You Catholics go, oh, I'm not a Christian. Or I'm not going to a Catholic church. I'm not going to a Christian church. But guess what? The Pope, Rome gave you the same thing. Again, Democrat, Republic is the same thing. It's the same thing. Okay? This decree also expressed the Pope's wish to convert the natives, the indigenous people. We were not Christians. We didn't have that kind of spirituality or religion to convert. That's why you call yourselves converts. Oh, you are converted and you are so proud of that. You people should be ashamed of yourself. These lands to Catholicism in order to strengthen the Christian empire. The Catholics is the one who gave you Christianity. I know the truth hurts. I know. And I'm not doing it to hurt you, family. I'm doing it so you could free yourself. In 1573, Pope Paul II issued the papal bull Sublimis Deus, which denounced the idea that Native Americans should be treated like irrational animals and used exclusively for our profit and our services. So you hear what they said? In 1573, I guess the Pope got a little bit of conscience. He felt a little bit moral. He said that issued the papal bull called Sublimis Deus, which denounced the idea of Native Americans, our ancestors. Remember, they're not dealing with Africa now. They're into the Americas. Should be treated like irrational animals and used, right? Used exclusively for profit and services. I have to read that again so it could, it could register. In 1573, Pope Paul II issued the papal bull Sublimis Deus, which denounced, so he's denouncing, in other words, he's against that the idea of Native Americans should be treated like irrational animals because they call us savages. When they came, that's what they call us, savages, right? And used exclusively, saying, even if we know what, let's not treat them like irrational animals, but instead they should be used exclusively for profit or services. Oh, wow. So you know what? Don't treat me like an animal, but use me for profit, human stock, human capital, and our services. Yes, you know what? Slaves. Wow. What a big difference. 1635, Pope Urban the Eighth, 1623 to 1644, formally excommunicated anyone still holding Indian slaves. By this time, however, the doctrine of discovery was deeply rooted and led nonetheless to the conquest of non-Christian lands and people in every corner of the world. Again, we were not Christians. Although the U.S. was founded on freedom from such tyranny, the idea that white people and Christians had certain divine rights was nevertheless ingrained in the young nation's policies. The slave trade, for example, and centuries of violence against black people depended upon the idea that non-whites were less human. The theft of Native American lands required a similar justification. 1823 Supreme Court case, Johnson versus McIntosh. In 1823, the doctrine of discovery was written into U.S. law as a way to deny land rights to Native Americans in the Supreme Court case Johnson versus McIntosh. It is ironic that the case did not directly involve any Native Americans since the decision stripped them of all their independence. In 1775, Thomas Johnson and a group of British investors bought a tract of land from the Piankisho Indians. During the Revolutionary War, this land was taken from the British and became part of the U.S. in the country of Illinois. In 1818, the United States government sold part of the land to William McIntosh, a citizen of Illinois. This prompted Joshua Johnson, the heir to one of the original buyers, to claim the land through a lawsuit which he later lost. U.S. Supreme Court. In an unanimous decision, Chief Justice John Marshall wrote that the Christian European nations had assumed complete control over the lands of America during the Age of Discovery. Once again, all of you who are here calling yourself Christians, know how you became a Christian. Family, let this Bible go. This Bible is filled of blood of our ancestors. This Bible did not come from no imaginary God in the sky, family. All right? They are telling you that in their own literature. They are telling you what they did. They are telling you what they did. I'm going to read it again. In the unanimous decision, Chief Justice John Marshall wrote that the Christian European nations had assumed complete control over America during the Age of Discovery. America is the continent including the Caribbean, Mexico, Canada, North, South, Central America. It's the Americas, family. We were not Christians. Our ancestors were raped. The children were beaten and raped. Little boys were raped. They were shot. They were brutalized so that they could accept Christianity. And here you are, people, today, freely being Christians. Wow, this is sad. For Joshua Johnson, this meant that the original sale of land by the Puwan-Kishores was invalid because they were not the lawful owners. For Native Americans, this decision foreshadowed the Trail of Tears and 100 years of forced removal and violation. Despite recent efforts to have the case repealed as a symbol of goodwill, Johnson versus McIntosh has never been overruled and remains good law. 1845 Manifest Destiny. In 1845, a Democratic leader and prominent editor named John L. O'Sullivan gave the doctrine of discovery a uniquely American flavor when he coined the term manifest destiny to defend U.S. expansion and claims new territory. That's what they do. They always change things to make it seem like they're making it better when it's really the same thing disguised as something else. The same way they keep calling you all these different names. Black, African American, Negro, it's all the same thing. They are names that continuously keep you in that perpetual cycle of slavery, servitude. Dum Diversas, you are babies of Dum Diversas. You are still within that perpetual cycle of slavery, family. Wake up. The right of our manifest destiny to overspread and to possess the whole of the continent which Providence has given us for the development of great experiment of liberty is right such as that of the tree to the space of air and the earth suitable for the full expansion of its principle and destiny of growth. Even the air that you breathe, they want to turn it into Christianity. The idea of manifest destiny was publicized in newspapers and debated by politicians. It further descends among U.S. citizens of an inevitable or natural right to expand the nation and to spread freedom and democracy, though only to those deemed capable of self-government, which certainly did not include blacks or Native Americans. All right, once again, they were showing you that there's a difference between the blacks and the indigenous Americans, all right, that you call black. Whether called the doctrine of discovery or manifest discovery, the principles that stimulated U.S. thirst for land have been disastrous for Native Americans, African Americans, Mexicans, and many others, both in North America and abroad, who lost lives, liberty, and property as the result of U.S. expansionism. The history of Christian law helps us to understand how our leaders many considered heroes and role models today underwork monstrous acts in the name of liberty. This insight into the prevailing ideas of the day, however, does not excuse their behavior. Some may have truly been misled by the ideals of Christian discovery, but others acted knowingly out of self-interest, greed, and bigotry, even as far back as Columbus. However, there were religious and political leaders as well as ordinary citizens who knew better and worked against racism, colonization, and slavery. When the Indian Removal Act of 1830 came up for debate in Congress, for example, New Jersey Senator Theodore Freeling Hossain, a strong believer in Christian compassion, led a bold attack with a 6-hour speech that extended over 3 days. Freeling Hossain predicted terrible suffering and therefore argued to uphold the independence of the Cherokee Nation. Many other members of Congress, including Tennessee Davy Crockett, fought against the act. Though it passed in both houses, 47 of Congress to 116 of 246 members voted in opposition to the bill. It is tempting to view the problems of the past as ancient history long resolved, no longer relevant to our lives. The effect of manifest destiny, land disputes, and countless native peoples suffer from extreme poverty and other social problems as a result of past policies. September 11th and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq have ignited age-old debates about U.S. objectives. Though the public discourse no longer includes terms such as expansion, discovery, and destiny, discussions about globalization, preemptive war, and the responsibilities of the world's only superpower echo familiar themes. It's the same thing. All they like to do is just disguise the old with a new name, but it's the same thing. It is perhaps fitting that this dialogue ensues as the country commemorates the bicentennial of Lewis and Clark expedition of Corps of Discovery, which paved the way for U.S. expansion. The anniversary presents an important opportunity to pay tribute to the victims and survivors of Indian genocide. All right. Well, they're not paying us. You know what I'm saying? Because we are the children. To learn about contemporary Native cultures and issues, and to work against prejudice and discrimination in local communities. So, family, once again, you see what has happened to our people. I had to go through this so you could see. All right, you could see what happened to our people on the arrival of these invaders. Okay, our people were not Christians. Our people were not Muslims. Okay, the Americas wasn't Morocco, and it will never be Morocco. Saracens were not indigenous to the Americas. Saracens were indigenous to North Africa. Berbers, those were the Moors, some of them. Okay, and yes, they did come and mix with our people when they signed a treaty with Portugal and Spain and the Indies. So that gave them permission to come here and help these people destroy our people, rape our women, kill our children, rape our daughters, and rape our sons. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that so that we don't honor our ancestors. Who we are and what we are made of is not our fault. So we have to embrace all our ancestors, but know your true story. That's all I'm just saying. Now, I'm going to go into, like I said, family, that's all I do is research and bring you the information so that you could see what you need to do to free yourself. Now, okay, we're going to now we're going to go into this information. Of course, I got it from www.informationclearinghouse.info/articles. All right, so you could go check it out as well. All right, now, family, do me a favor, pause the video and go support the GoFundMe. As you can see, this is taking a lot of energy out of me. That's what I do. Again, I do these things because this is my livelihood. This is what I do because I want you to see and understand where we came from and where we are at and what's happening to our people. Okay, you are still under Dum Diversas. You are still under that perpetual cycle of slavery. All you Christians, that's what you are, slaves. And you are serving the God and the lords of Rome. They are telling you what they did. Get your head out of that Bible for a second and do some real research. Okay, now we're going to talk about, first of all, you need to know that America has always been in war. And when I say America, I mean the United States of America, when it became the United States of America. All right? Now, the United States of America was founded on July 4th, 1776. So when you are celebrating July 4th, all of you who like to let's barbecue and celebrate, you are celebrating the death and the persecution of your ancestors. How do you celebrate the death of your ancestors? It's like somebody coming to your house, killing your daughter, and 10 years later, they made a holiday to celebrate her death, and you're over there barbecuing. Like, this shit hurts, man. It really hurts. Like, seriously, it hurts. It really hurts. But anyway, I'm not going to get emotional here. All right? Because I got to give this information. America has been at war 93% of the times. Okay? 222 times out of 232 years. I'm going to read that again. America has been at war 93% of the times. 222 out of 239 years since 1776. Family, why do you think our ancestors can't rest? Because this land is always at war. It's always in turmoil. And her children are in that same perpetual cycle of slavery under Dum Diversas. And they are not waking up. Okay? They are not waking up. They don't realize that our ancestors were killed to be Christians. But on every block in our neighborhood, you have 7 churches. Dum Diversas in effect. The perpetual cycle of slavery. Anyway, this is by Washington Blog, February 23rd, 2017. The U.S. has been at peace for only 21 years, total since its birth. And they're talking about the birth of the what you call the United States of America. Remember, the United States of America is not the American continent. The USA is a country in America, just like Canada, Mexico, and the entire Caribbean and the surroundings. You guys are all Americans. All right? Below, he said, is a year-by-year timeline of American wars, which reveals something quite interesting. Since the United States was founded in 1776, she has been at war during 214 out of her 235 calendar years of existence. In other words, there are only 21 calendar years which the US did not wage major wars. To put this in perspective, pick any year since 1776 and there is about 91% of a chance that the United States of America involved in some war during the calendar year. No US president truly qualifies as a peacetime president. Instead, all US presidents can technically be considered war presidents. But yes, still, they're going around telling you about the world. Everybody else, they're the ones that are terrorists, right? The only time the US went 5 years without war was 1935 to 1940, was during the isolationist period of the Great Depression. Here is a graphic depiction of the wars. So we're going to start and we're going to see, and we're not even talking about, before the conquest. We're not even talking, we're talking about after, way after, in 1776. So after Portugal, Spain, Rome, they came and they destroyed our people, forced Christianity on them, murdered and raped our children, our little boys, right? All that, the pillage, go around all the indigenous places in the world and destroy these people. So that's just, we're not even talking about that. That in itself alone is hell. Now we're talking about when they formed the United States of America. Now the pillage and the destruction still continues. And who was dealing with all that? Yes, our ancestors. And I'm going to prove it here to you again. Year by year, timeline of American major wars, 1776 to 2011. 1776 American Revolution War, Chickamauga Wars, Second Cherokee War, and Pennamite Yankee War. Again, those were our ancestors, all what they call the Indians. All the way down to, you have 1777, every year. You have the Chickamauga War again, the Revolution War, the Pennamite War, the Yankee War. Then you have the North. Then you have the Northwest Indian War. All right. And we go into 1780. I'm not talking about consecutive years. Okay, so if I skip a year, you know what's happening. Then we have what's that? From 1785 to 1794, the Chickamauga War, Northwest Indian War. Okay, again, taking Indians out of their land, killing them, raping their children, murdering them, our people, so that they could take our land. All right. Now you have 1812, the War of Tecumseh's War, Seminole Wars. U.S. occupied Spanish held Amelia Island and other parts of East Florida. All right. Then you have more wars in Florida amongst the Seminoles. You have with the extended war. Then you have in 1815 they have what's called the Second Barbary War. All right, the Barbary War. Remember what I told you? The Barbary were, people from that certain area, okay, of what they call the Saracens. So, but now that war was merely, they were fighting anti-piracy. It was a war on the seas, really. But it was all during the Caribbean, the Mediterranean Sea, etc., and the Atlantic Ocean. All right. Then you have and then you have 1826. There was no major war. 1827, the Winnebago War. And then between 1828 and 1830, there were no major wars, right? Then picked up again, 1831, the Sac and Fox Indian War. 1832, the Black Hawk War. 1833, the Cherokee Indian War. 1834, Cherokee Indian War, Pawnee Indian Territory. Campaign War. 1835, Cherokee Indian War and Wars, Second Creek War. 1836, Cherokee Indian War, Seminole Wars, Second Creek War, Missouri-Iowa Border War. All those wars are being fought on all the way down to 1849 Indian Territory. You have the Seminole Wars in 1842. Then you have 1844, the Texas Indian Wars. Then you have 1846, Mexican-American War. Texas Indian Wars, again, is the same people, Mexico, fighting the same inhabitants, all right? It's fighting the same indigenous people of the Americas. Then 1849, you have the Texas Indian Wars, Cayos Wars, Southwest Indian Wars, Navajo Wars, skirmish between 1st Cavalry and the Indians, all right? Again, family, showing you that those people were literally raping and murdering our people so that we are where we are at today. All those wars came all the way up till we have 1877, Texas Indian War, family. Everything is about Indian. All right. Then in 1880, U.S. forces invade Mexico. That's also indigenous land. They are also Americans. All right. All the way down to from 1880 to all the way down to 1886. All that's Mexico wars. Hawaii, all those places. Okay. Bannock Indian disturbances. Then you have in 1897 no wars, right? Then you have in 1898 Spanish-American Wars, Battle of Chippewa Indian, and then you have from 1889 all the way down to 1912 they have wars in what's called the Philippine American and the Banana Wars. Guess what the Banana Wars are? Banana Wars are actually in the Caribbean. And it was strange to me. A lot of times, a lot of Caribbean people tell people when they come to America, they ask them, "Did you come on the banana boat?" And I never knew what that meant, but now I know. Those are the Caribbean Wars. Okay, that's to show you what again happened to the indigenous people in the Caribbean. And family, I could go on and on, all the way up to 1926 Banana Wars. Up to 1934 Banana Wars. Then from 1935 to 1940 no major wars. 1941 to 1945 World War II. Then you go all the way down to 1950 the Korea War all the way up to 1953. Then from 1955 all the way, then you have a 1954 covert war in Guatemala, and then you have the Vietnam War from 1955 all the way up to 1975. Then 1976 to 1978 no major war. 1979 the Cold War to 1981 the Cold War. Afghanistan, Nicaragua, and family, I could go on, and up to 1991, First Gulf War conflict with Iraq, War on Terror in Afghanistan, 2001, 2011, War on Terrorism. Family, again, just to show you, my brothers and sisters, what's happening, all right? We, as a people, what we have been through. You have to really get a true understanding. Dive into history. Go into these people's documents and see what these people have done to our people. We are still under the effects of Dum Diversas, that perpetual cycle of slavery. You have to get out of her, family. You have to get out of the beast. You have to free yourself. You have to free yourself. You are still under contract. You are a prisoner of war, a POW, family. So do me a favor, pause the video. All right, go hit the GoFundMe link below. Once again, I need your support. All right, because what I'm trying to do, I mean, apart from all what I'm doing already and all the materials that I'm printing, I want to print like 50,000 flyers so I can go around the different high schools and give out that information to the youngins. Because we have to get that. We have, family, you know, it's the only way this is going to happen. We have to wake them up. We have to wake them up. And like I said, I am taking the responsibility. I feel I have an obligation to do that. Because believe me, man, if it wasn't for the obligation and the love that I have for my people, I told you before, I would have bought a one-way ticket and go to the Caribbean and just chill. But my ancestors got me here for a reason. I need your support on that. So pause the video, go hit the GoFundMe link. All right, and support the brother, man. All right, the support is needed. All right, so now I'm going to talk to you about this information I got from what you call the Human Rights Library. So you could go and get the information. It's www.hrlibrary.umn.edu/instree. All right, go check that information. And really, this is the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war, right? /75 U.N.T.S.135, entered into force October 21st, 1950. So they even have a manual, okay, on how to treat their prisoners of war through Dum Diversas. You are prisoners of war. And this is like what, a 48-page document, but I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm just going to read a couple of the articles. All right. Part 1, General Provisions. Article 1. The high contracting parties undertake to respect and to ensure respect for the present convention in all circumstances. Article 2. In the addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even if the state of the war is not recognized by one of the parties. What they're saying is this: you are in war, you have a contract with the, what you call it, the higher power, the higher contracting party. And this applies even if you don't recognize, it's not recognized by you. So this document, okay, the Geneva Convention treatment of prisoners of war, POWs, apply to you, even if you don't know that you are at war. It applies to you. So I want you to really go read this, because I went through all this and all I saw was the prison system. It is the same procedures and the rules that's applied to people when they get arrested. Family, please, okay, go read this. I'm going to try to see if I could get the link and put it in the description below. All right. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of a high contracting party, even if the said occupants meets with no armed resistance. Okay? So you hear that again. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of a high contracting party. The high contracting party is you know who. All right? Even if the said occupation meets with no armed resistance, even if they are not met with no armed resistance. In other words, by you going into the street screaming Black Lives Matter, that applies to you as well. Although one of the powers in conflict may not be a party to the present convention, the powers who are parties therefore shall remain bound by it in their mutual relations. They shall furthermore be bound by the convention in relation to the said power if the latter accepts and applies the provisions thereof. Article 3. In the case of armed conflict not of an international character occurring in the territory of one of the high contracting parties, each party to the conflict shall be bound to apply as a minimum the following provisions. All right, and it have the provisions. I'm not going to go into that. However, let's look at Article 4, and then I'm going to stop. You could go read it yourself and digest it yourself. Article 4. A. A prisoner of war, in the sense of present convention, are persons belonging to one of the following categories who have fallen into the power of the enemy. In other words, you have fallen into the power of the enemy. They are telling you that they are your enemy. Number 1, members of the armed forces of a party to the conflict, as well as members of militias or voluntary corps forming part of such armed forces. Members of other militias and members of other volunteer corps, including those of organized resistance movements belonging to a party to the conflict and operating in or outside their own territory, even if this territory is occupied provided that such militias or volunteer corps, including such organizations, resistance movements, fulfill the following conditions. A, that of being commanded by a person responsible for his subordinates. B, that of having a fixed distinctive sign recognizable at a distance. 3, that of carrying arms openly. 4, that of conducting their operations in accordance with the laws and customs of war. 3, members of regular armed forces who profess allegiance to a government or an authority not recognized by the detaining force. Okay, I want you to read that and let it digest for yourself. Okay, that is where you are. Remember, you are a prisoner of war. Okay, and it's saying that members of other militias, it's saying that, okay, let me read Article 4 again. Prisoners of war, in the sense of the present convention, are persons belonging to one of the following categories who have fallen into the power of the enemy. Okay, so it is clear to say that we have fallen into the powers of the enemy based on their article. All right, now 2 is saying members of other militias and members of other volunteer corps, including those of organized resistance movements belonging to a party to conflict and operating in or outside of their own territory, even if this territory is occupied, provided that such militias or volunteer corps, including such organization resistance movements, fulfill the following conditions. They're saying that, even if you are a prisoner of war, there are in their own documents, there are conditions, okay, that you have certain privilege to as a prisoner of war, okay, as long as you fulfill the following conditions, as long as you're fulfilling so that's where they really messed up at in this provision right here, because now they are saying that A, of being commanded by a person responsible for his subordinates. Like, you could have your own militia, you could have your own movement, you could have your own organizations, whatever you could have, as long as it's being commanded by a person responsible for his subordinates. Okay, B, that of having a fixed distinctive sign recognizable at a distance, as long as you make it be known from a distance, a sign saying this is who we are. As a prisoner of war, you have that right. C, that of carrying arms openly. You have the right to carry arms openly as long as you follow those criteria as a prisoner of war. Okay, that being commanded, you have a person you have to show a person that's responsible for his subordinates, that of having fixed distinctive signs, in other words, making it be known, put public that who you are, and that you have the right to bear arms openly. Okay, so that it's visible, that's your right. That of conducting the operations in accordance with the laws and customs of war. Not the laws and customs of them, but of war. So you have to learn the laws and customs of war. I'm going to end there with that because this is a whole document that you need to just go and digest. But I wanted to just get to Article 4 real quick so that you know and understand exactly what's going on. So now, even if you're a prisoner of war, when they met you, they took you as a prisoner of war, meaning that you were the indigenous peoples of the land. So you became prisoners of war. However, you are technically no longer a prisoner of war because they changed your status. They made you black, African American, Negro, colored, and minority. So therefore, the Prisoner of War Act or provision doesn't necessarily apply to you directly, but indirectly it is. Because they changed your status, you are no longer a prisoner of war because they have made you part of the construct. That's why a lot of our people will fight against you that look like you, will fight against you and call you an enemy because they believe that they are United States citizens now. So therefore, that provision which give you the right to open arms, carry arms openly, may not be for you technically because you haven't removed yourself, or you may not be considered a prisoner of war. But as a prisoner of war, you have that right. So family, again, understand, and understand what has happened to our people. You have to go back to being indigenous. And when you go back to being indigenous, it puts you back under the provisions of Dum Diversas, where now you have the right to do those things, and also have a right where you could also, if I'm not mistaken, you could also become a refugee. Okay, you could become a refugee. Basically, what is that saying is, it's that, you still under Dum Diversas, at war with an occupational authority, and you are being held prisoner. You see what I'm saying? And that's why the world cannot come to your rescue, because you are no longer considered a prisoner of war based on that, because they're based on your identity being changed. But if you have to peep the game. If you go back to your original identity as the indigenous people of the land, the aboriginal people of the land, it puts you back under Dum Diversas, and therefore you could become a refugee to escape Babylon, to escape the beast. Family, I'm telling you, man, peep the game. All right? A refugee into another country if you so choose. Or you could stay here and deal with whatever you got to deal with. All right? However, still under Dum Diversas, at war with an occupying or occupier, and being held as a prisoner. Family, all you have to do is just get it, man. I'm trying my best to break this down to y'all. Anyway, I'm going to end this video. I know it's been a little lengthy, but it was important for me to do that. It took a lot of energy out of me, really. But know that, in summary, that our people weren't Christians. And to be a Christian, or calling yourself a Muslim in our land, which you have adopted because our ancestors were raped, is a slap in their face. Okay, it's really a slap in their face. It's a disrespect. And because of the Dum Diversas, I'm saying, you have certain rights, okay, as a prisoner of war. But because they changed your identity, it took that sort of like, not protection per se, but that privilege, or that right. They took it. You're not. It's not for you, really, because now you're a black African American Negro. So if they see you in the street with a gun, they could gun you down. But going back to being indigenous, the aboriginal people of the land, it puts you back on the Dum Diversas, and you have the right. Also, you could become a refugee and get refugee status in another country. All right. So I hope that video makes sense. One of the ways, again, I'm going to do another video because I don't want this to be too lengthy. I'm going to do another video in ways you could start, again, going back to your indigenous status and going back to being aborigines of the land, because that's who we are. So family, wake up. Please share the information. And once again, please support the GoFundMe. It's needed. All right, because I want to do these flyers. I got some more work to print. And again, this is my livelihood. And I do what I do because I love you. So show the love back and support the GoFundMe. All right, peace and love.